I'm going to knock that, so I'll move it now. All right. Hey, when I was doing announcements before, I sort of forgot. The reason I hate announcements is I always forget something. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So, let me just get that right before I start the sermon. Two things I just need to mention. The first thing was I misspoke before when I said the Pastors and Leaders Conference up at Coffs Harbour this week is not important for you. It actually is really important for you because it is about Lex. Lex was here I think a couple of months ago, and he was talking about the Wesleyan Church recapturing its calling as a mission organisation. And so I guess what we're going to go and do this week is not hear a bunch of motivational speeches. We're actually going to go up there and map out and pray into that. So it's probably actually a very important thing that you should know about and that you should pray about and that you really should be part of. So we get to go, but I very much want you to feel like you're part of that. The other thing I should just mention is that my son's always after church merch. He's always talking about church merchandise and stuff with a church name on it to wear. And the very best I can do at the moment is we have some church memorabilia that came out of the cupboard that's been sitting there for a long time. It is currently in a little room out here between the toilets and the foyer. And so what I want to say to you this morning is if you are in need of some church merch or some church memorabilia, and that really is just something that you need, everything in that room is for you to take. Does that make sense? All right. All right, I think I've finished announcements. Oh, man. Hey, first, great to be back with you. I just want to say thank you, seeing I've been away. Thank you to Noah. Thank you to Ange. Thank you to everyone else who's... and thank you to you as well, because the church doesn't just work with me, it works with all of us, okay? And I know Noah in particular sort of got tossed in the deep end a bit with a couple of things, and I just really wanted to say appreciate you. But by all accounts, you did an awesome job, mate. So now, just to apologise in advance, it's been 7 weeks since I preached, all right? And the last time I had a holiday and I came back and preached the first sermon, it was a shocker. All right, so if you're expecting brilliance today, it just might take me a while to get back in the flow, if you know what I mean, all right? But I'm back for maybe the most important series I'll do for a while, so no pressure here. I noticed something when I was in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago, and this is, it's actually really kind of hard to miss. Every second or third car in that town is a black Escalade. Every second car, there were whole streets where the only cars you could see that were these black card, like clearly with armor plating sort of stuff going on, and there was security people everywhere. The back windows are blacked out, so the front windows you can see these two big bulky blokes, and in the back you got no idea who's there, and you sort of like, on some weird level, I actually want to go and approach them and see who's in there. And on some weird level, I really shouldn't, you know. And I guess just with the amount of VIPs and politicians and everything else going on, that photo's taken from across the street from the White House. So I guess it's just how things roll in DC, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And for the last couple of years, I've wanted to do a vision type series of some sort about how the church should roll, or about how the kingdom values in the church should roll. And I guess heading into year 6 for me, this just feels like it's time. So I'm going to base this series in Elisha. It doesn't fit particularly nicely, but we're going to start there and just see where I'm just going with God, right? I want to be clear about something before I start, that there is no ulterior motive in this series. Everyone okay? I'm not going to convince you we need to extend. Everyone all right? Yes. I'm not going to convince you we need to do 2 services, although the board have started prayerfully talking about those things, I guess, at the moment. none of what I share is going to be a surprise. None of this is going to be different for anybody. But I just feel like these statements have been around for a while, and it's just time to lovingly spell them out. And I know the word vision brings a bit of baggage with it, because for the Pentecostals in the room, vision is like the pastor's going to tell us what to do, and we're just going to do it. And that's not what I'm trying to do. All right. The other side of vision is that for people who maybe have been in a smaller church and know everybody and love everybody, vision just sounds like an excuse to change more stuff. And I want to lovingly just spell out why I'm doing this and what the motives are behind it. Does that make sense? Yes. Here is the motivation. Well, first it's to honour God and just go on with Him. But two, as I look around, we have an incredibly diverse bunch of people, don't we? We have people here from a very conservative background and a very charismatic background. We have people who have been part of a church that's small, and people who are part of a church that's big. We've got men, women, kids, older folk. We've got a great cross section and an incredibly diverse bunch of people. Everyone with me? I think the greatest challenge we have with that dynamic is to bring all of those people together and point them in the same direction. Yeah? And that is my only motivation in this series. Does that make sense? That's all I'm trying to do. I'm really not talking vision as I'm just talking about, I guess, kingdom values and how those same kingdom values that have helped the church flourish for the last 20 odd plus however many years the church has been here for, and however long you guys have been here for, and even elsewhere, will be the same thing that help us build into the future whatever God brings us. Does that? I hope. But by the way, I want to say a massive thank you to Linda Sires and to Julia Sires and to Adam, who did an amazing job with the creativity. There's a thing up on the wall out there that you might have noticed. It will be up on the screen in just a minute. And thank you to the couple of families where those photos were taken. I will sort of just try to spell out what those photos are and why they matter for us. And just thanks to John for arranging the printing. There was a lot of other work that went in there. So here's where we start, right? Here's the first one, and I would suggest that if we get this one right, everything else will work out. All right? A God without equal. We exist for His glory. If you're wondering, by the way, where all this stuff came from, it came from months of prayer, and it came from actually just a whole bunch of months of refining this with a bunch of people I trust. So this is not rocket science. This is just God doing His work. Have you ever felt like life is just one of those things that you just feel like you're in a cycle, like you're just caught in a wheel of a big machine and it's pushing along, and you're just a cog in the thing, and it just seems to roll ahead. It just seems to crush other people. It just seems to take all of us with us. And maybe life, and our spiritual life in particular, is just more of the same. Does that feel like life for anybody sometimes? I think Elisha's story is one that many of us would resonate with, because his life just seems to be a picture of the daily, more of the same boring predictability. All right? He's been born into a farming family. I'm not saying the farming families are boring. Everyone okay? I'm not going to... I resolved to do this with God's approval finally, and I don't necessarily worry about anybody else's. But I sort of say, is that okay to make some interaction, right? Elisha is born into a farming family. He's been ploughing this same field the same way with the same oxen for a whole bunch of years. And that is just how he rolls. That's just how things go in the paddock. He's grown up with this experience. That is what his life is. And just to quote Jimmy Barnes for a second, he's just another guy working hard to make a living, right? He is just doing that sort of stuff. And we know this is a big operation as a family because he's been allocated the 12th lot of oxen, which means there's 11 other better people who have got better oxen or maybe like the better thing ahead of him. This is quite unusual for the day, so it's actually quite a big operation that's going on. And I don't want to make any of this sound derogatory, but his perspective on life has got to be something of this. He's just going through the motions. He's ploughing the same bit of dirt over and over again, and all he can see is the back end of the same oxen that he's been working with for forever. All right? And it must feel like God is really absent. It must feel like this is all a waste of time. What am I actually doing? And that is until Elijah, who is God's prophet of the day and man of his moment, walks onto the scene. He walks past 11 other people and he puts a coat on Elisha's shoulders and essentially walks away. And you're like, well, what exactly is going on here? And it does seem a little bit random that the guy's just passing out a coat and keeps rolling. But for somebody whose life is probably going not very far, God is putting a spiritual invitation, a godly, prophetic anointing, a spiritual calling. Just call it whatever you want. And he is inviting Elisha to pursue a very different type of existence from this moment forward. Okay? And that, my friends, is the invitation that God in the person of Jesus offers to each and every one of us. Okay? He invites us into a life-giving relationship with a life-giving God, with a larger purpose and plan for our lives and for every day than what we can cook up. All right? Where we're asked to accept his lordship, his loving control over all of the things in our world, and to walk every day knowing that living for the glory of somebody bigger than me is what I'm called to do. When I was in the US out having dinner with a pastor's friend of mine named Mike, we were having some amazing crab cakes at a place called the Blue Dog Saloon. And pretty nice, actually, I've got to say. There was a lady who took our order, and she was somebody who came to Mike's church as a kid. She had grown up in the church. She had left the church. She had been in a long-running relationship that had was sort of taking her in a certain direction. And she was somehow deeply convicted by God one day that she was living for a glory far less than what she was intended for. And to her credit, had just with a couple of friends returned from a trip where they had together radically recommitted their lives to living for a glory greater than their own. And she's sitting there in the Blue Dog Saloon as we eat crab cakes, explaining to us the calling that God had sort of given her in, and it wasn't all nicely mapped out. But life was now very, very different because it was lived for somebody's glory other than hers. And that is essentially the invitation that God puts before all of us at different points in our life. Okay? Let me just scoot through 5 points here this morning quickly. Elisha's calling is a complete change of purpose, isn't it? He's done one thing, now he's doing another. Okay? He probably wondered, does God have, if there is a God, does God have something for me in this life? Does God have more for me? And this invitation is a very, very clear sense of direction. God actually does have more for you. His kingdom is what matters. So step in. And that's the invitation. God in different ways, once God enlightens and enters your life, your greatest pursuit is now Him and not the things that you think it was. And it's a privilege. Can I just tell you, sometimes pastoral work is a drag, but it's a joy and it's a privilege. Because one day it'll make sense. All right. Here's point 2. It is a calling away from yourself. What Elisha cannot do here is go, all right, God, that's nice. I'm going to go and live for myself. He can't stay in the field and keep ploughing. He actually has to. It requires a yes, I am available, and yes, I am willing, and then a daily yes to keep saying yes over and over again, and to leave all that he knows and all he's familiar with to go in a different direction. Okay? For some of you, when you meet Jesus, your life will maybe make a very radical difference. It may go in a very different direction when you follow him. It may. For many of you, it may just continue on the same way it was in many respects, and it's actually going to be the start of discerning what is God up to and how do I work with him. The other part of that, I think, for many people is it will mean you leave a church one day, you still go and have lunch with your family or whatever you do. You still turn up to the same workplace on a Monday morning, surrounded by the same people, with the same, maybe even level of dysfunction that you left on Friday. But you should walk in on Monday with a completely different sense of why you are there. Okay? The reason the cross is going to be the reason we made the cross the center point of that whole thing on the wall is that life on the other side of the cross should be a reminder to us that each and every time we see it should actually give us, I think, a renewed sense of direction, because God's involved in every moment of life from here on now. Third, God's call will always involve sacrifice, won't it? It cost Elisha his availability. It also cost him a pretty good pack of oxen and a plough. It also cost him his livelihood. He burns the plough. He burns a bunch of good oxen because there is no path backwards. All right? And let me just tell you that the invitation to follow Jesus and work for his glory will always involve a cost. Yeah? It will always involve a cost. It's painful and it's painful and inconvenient to go to a small group during the week when your life is otherwise planned out and I don't really want to go out tonight. It's always a cost to give money to something that you can't necessarily see the benefits of right here, right now, because we're all used to giving money for things we can see the results of, aren't we? It's always going to be, it's always going to require the realigning of resources and money for something greater than your kingdom. It's always going to be, the invitation to follow Jesus will always involve a cost. And it will always involve a cost to you. Even picking up your Bible in the morning is a cost when it interrupts your relaxation time or your other things that you got going on, okay? Your screen time or whatever, okay? Let me just lovingly say something here to the church. I really want to make it uncomfortable for you to come and sit in the church and do nothing. And I say that with all the love and respect to everybody here. That does make sense. I'm just going to let it sit with you. All right? Because here's the thing. As the church grows and as the church develops and more people meet Jesus, here's the reality. The cost of that does increase. The cost of that on me as a leader increases, unfortunately. And I don't really like that, but it will increase on me. The cost of that will increase on all of us. And the only path forward in that is to invite more people to step in and share the load. That's what a church does. And so while I guess life, no, I'll skip that. Here's why. Number 4, God's call to sacrifice is always others focused. All right? Elisha doesn't get a calling to make him feel better about himself. Elisha doesn't get a calling and go, cool, I'm sorted out. Now I can go solve everybody else's... No. Elisha is not given a spiritual authority or a sense of calling for himself. He is given it for the sake of other people. And he burns the plough and the oxen to commemorate what God has done, and he feeds his whole community. And then he goes, okay? He leaves all that he knows, empowered by God, knowing that his life will be, in many respects, an offering. It will be poured out day by day into the lives of other people. In fact, what I'll get to next week is that I reckon there is probably not in every story, but if you read the whole of Elisha's story, which I have while I was on holidays, it is amazing the amount of times that Elisha is asked by God, essentially, you make yourself empty, I'll fill you, and then you keep pouring out into the lives of other people. That is, there are so many stories in Elisha's story that involve an empty vessel that God fills and that Elisha is asked to steward. That is his life. And can I just suggest to you, that will be and should be your life as well. Being filled by God so you can pour it out in love to the people around you. And so I guess the picture of a church who simply come and sit and sing and receive is good for a season, but it is not healthy. All right? It must be a community empowered and filled by God's Spirit who come together and lovingly sacrifice to and reach other people. That's what the church is about. And so while life will power on trying to always call us back to comfort, normality, predictability, ease and safety, the call of Jesus is always sacrifice for the sake of others. That's just the DNA of a good church. Here's the last one. God's calling always involves the invitation for the next person. Because just remember the larger story, right? Elijah has been the prophet for a long time. He's had plenty of fights with Ahab and Jezebel. He's called down fire from heaven. In a few weeks' time, or a few, in a short period in the larger story, there's fire from heaven coming down to take him home in a chariot, which is I've got to tell you is the way I'm trying to go. That has got to be the way to go to heaven. I don't know if it's possible, but I am going to try. Anyway. So Elijah has been the guy for a long time, but then he had that period of burnout. Elisha is now the answer to his prayers, and there is, in this moment, a handover of responsibility, isn't there? So the goal of ministry, or God's calling on one person, is never to get so entrenched that they're going to serve us forever. The goal of ministry is to raise up the next person and the person after them who can hear God's call to their generation, who will say yes to God's call to their generation, and will lead the mission forward into God's generation wherever he might call them. And we just have to get used to, in a healthy, multi-generational church, which was already prayed this morning, we've got to invite the next generation and the next bunch of people to lead the place so the mission can go forward. And I guess the opponent to those things would be a spirit that just says, I don't want to see that happen. or a spirit that is simply unwilling to say yes. Just to speak to one situation that I just want to mention very quickly, and just to acknowledge that for many of you who are sort of waiting for that moment where God throws a dirty old towel on your shoulder, or a coat, or you're just waiting for the moment where God shows up, can I just suggest that it is really, it's really annoying waiting for God to do that. And for many of you, that moment may never come in some grand way. But can I just say two things? Number one, while everybody else looks as though they've got it all together, just ignore the comparisons. Your calling is not theirs. Your calling is yours. You do what God calls you to do. Everyone okay? Yes. Just say yes. Yes. Just say yes. Okay? God never wastes a moment. Here I am at age 48. And I can tell you, if I was 24, I probably couldn't make that statement. Now that I do have grey hair, I can tell you God never wastes a moment developing his people. And so if you're young and you're waiting for that day where God sort of drops it on your shoulder, be patient and keep saying yes, but he'll never waste a moment. He will never waste a moment to develop the people he wants. And number two, just get in the habit of saying yes where you are. All right? Rick Warren said recently that most people don't need a spiritual gifts assessment to work out where they have to serve or what they're suited to. They just need to say yes where they are. And once you say yes where you are, and you continue saying yes where you are, God just has a way of using every yes for his glory. And the rest works it out by itself. And actually, maybe over a lifetime, God actually sharpens the call if you continue saying yes. That doesn't mean you've got to say yes to everything, but you know what I mean, right? So if you're not sure where God is calling you to be part of, taking that mission forward or serving in the church or whatever else, my plea would be, yes, pray about it, but just get started somewhere, okay? We have roles available, requirements for training for different ones, because we're actually not going through the motions. We actually believe in the fact that we're doing this for his glory, which means we're improving day by day by day, okay? But there are also a myriad of ways that just involve saying yes to God, knowing it'll cost you something. Just get used to the fact it will cost you. But here's where I think Elisha gets to, and I think this is where all of us need to get to. We must give our very best for somebody whose glory is far greater than ours. Look, the senior pastor gets a couple of minutes grace, so I'm told, so I'm just going to take it this morning. I hope that's okay. So let me just cover two more things. What stands in the road of us living for his glory? What stands in the road of the church existing for his glory? Here's the answer. Usually it's us, isn't it? It usually is us. It's usually the stuff that we put in the road. Because let's face it, life can easily become, can't it? It can easily shift away from our Father to our family. There's nothing wrong with our family. It can easily shift away from being about his glory to ours. It can easily drift away from being about his work. It should be about his work, and it often becomes about ours. Life, I think, just has this way unconsciously of dragging us away day by day by day in the ongoing monotony of it, just to be apart from where God would need us to be. And I think, secondly, churches can sometimes be driven by a bunch of really good things, like a good reputation in the community, and there's nothing wrong with that. Churches can be driven to keep people informed about what we're doing, and I'm not opposed to any of that, okay? But first and foremost, the church exists for His glory. The church exists for Him, which means that the primary focus of the church is never us. It's never what we want, it's what He wants. And I want to just take an unusual step here this morning and try explaining my approach to ministry, because it has shifted. As someone who told God many years ago that I would never pastor a church, I am very aware that I am not the typical pastor. And I'm just going to lay it out there this morning, because I don't believe in keeping anything from anybody, all right? That is very clearly what happened, what I told God I would do, and here I am, and I keep telling people the same thing. Don't tell God what you won't do for Him. Just don't.
Well, you can, but He's going to get His way.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's right. You can. And here's the funny thing. I think what God has done in me over the last decade has very much changed me from being a natural go-getter and driven doer. And I think God has very much changed my calling over the last decade, which is this. I never start a day anymore. I never start planning for next Sunday based on what's on our calendar. I never start planning for anything based on what we are naturally driven to do. I refuse to do that now. I start every day in prayer, and it's become something like this. Lord, what do you want to do in the lives of your people and through your church? And how do I lovingly make space for you so you can do it? How do I, in many respects, remove the clutter so you can come and be Lord in your church and do your work? Rightly or wrongly, that's where God's brought me. So that's just how our church is going to operate naturally in the years to come. So let me just be really clear about something. I am not interested in running a busy, program-driven church. I'm interested in running a prayerful church that knows God's will, that loves Jesus passionately, and where people know a whole heap less about us and a whole bunch more about Him. All right? And while the mission and the ministries and the programs and all that sort of stuff do matter, I just sense desperately that God wants most is he wants people not set in their own agendas and plans. He wants people who are willing to be set in His. And I think what we have begun to see in our church in the last, probably in the last year in particular, is when we stop and do a bit less and we let Jesus be the center of it, the fruit just comes naturally. I can't tell you the number of conversations I have had with people in this church who would not normally be part of a church, who for some reason just feel at home here because God is calling them to Himself. I think what we're beginning to see ultimately is the fruit of God beginning to honour those and answer those prayers that started a lot of years ago. And here's what I want to do. I just want to invite you to be part of it. That is the only invitation I have. But we're not going to be a program-driven church. We are going to be a prayerful church where Jesus is the centre of everything. You can clap, but here's a problem, right? I talked a minute ago about letting God lead, so I'm just going to take a risk and let Him do it. Can I just explain what I'm on about? Today's message was about people receiving a calling as followers of Jesus to follow Jesus, to empty themselves of their sin, to be filled by His Spirit, and to give their lives living for His glory rather than their own. Everybody heard that message, right? But God also showed me during the week as I was praying through Exodus 17, which is a passage I was given in America that just carries a real weight for me. God showed me the first seven or eight words of a passage that really, I think, break his heart. So I'm just going to spell it out. Here we go. Verse 8 says, while the people of Israel were still at Rephidim, whatever that is. Another translation of that says, while the people remained at. And here's what God very much laid on my heart this week, and what I've spent most of the week praying about, and what I just sense that there is a tension in the room on this question in the hearts of many of you. So I'm just going to lay it out. Here it is. While God wants to call and invite so many of us to step in and begin being filled and beginning to work for his glory, there is also going to be people today who would very much prefer to stay where they are. That's just where the hearts of people are today. And I just... Can I just ask this morning, as we get to the end of this morning, and I just invite you to stand, as we bring all these things before the Lord, would you let him embrace his calling in your life? Would you step into all he wants to do for his glory? Or will your heart just want to stay where it is and refuse to go with him? All I can lovingly do is invite you to step forward with Jesus, to let him fill you, to embrace the job and the calling and the life he wants you to live. And I just would lovingly plead with you, with anybody wrestling with that, who don't want to go. Please go. Can I invite you to stand as we pray?